Hello everyone. Yet again we've got a rubbish background, we've not very good lighting today. I've just got all set up to film in my book room. The lighting was nice, my fake tan was looking good, I didn't have a bright forehead like I do sat here. I don't even know if I can cope with this. This is going to have to do right. I'm sorry that my forehead is looking bright, but there's not much I can do. Right, anyway, there's someone streaming the garden out the back where the book room is, so I'm having to film in the spare room again. But yeah, today I'm going to do my July wrap up, all the books read in July. Not that many this month, I've been a bit slumpy, I've just not been loving a lot of the books. This was, I think, the most average month ever. You will see that every book except one I gave the same rating. The last book I read of the month was a favourite, and we'll get to that one, but all the other books I rated the same. And they were all just very average, but anyway, we'll go through them. I'll explain why. I didn't dislike any of them. I had no bad books this month. I just didn't have many wow books either. So the first book I read this month was In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. I don't have physical copies of most of these books, by the way, because I'm reading a lot on my Kindle, so sorry I don't have books to hold up. You can just look at these ones next to me. But yeah, first book I read was In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. This is the second book in the Lovelight series. It comes after Lovelight Farms. And basically, in this book, the influencer from the first book, no, not, is she an influencer? Yeah, she kind of is. The social media lady from the first book, this second book is about her. And she is kind of searching for her happiness. She realises she's not doing what she wants to be doing in life. So she goes back to the farm, and the story progresses from there. Obviously, it's a romance, so you know she's going to meet someone, but yeah. So she's back in like the small town where the farm is, so it's that same kind of atmospheric vibe as the first book. It was fine. Like, my Goodreads review literally says nothing wrong with it, it just didn't wow me, and that's very true. There wasn't anything that stood out in this book that was like wrong, or I was like, oh, I don't like that. It was just an average book. Like, it was just fine. I gave it 3.5 because it was just fine. The next one I read was The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. Even though I only gave this 3.5, I was actually pleasantly surprised by it. The premise of this is essentially like Groundhog Day. So our main character, I don't know the names of any of these people, I'm so sorry because the books were average. But our female main character keeps waking up on Valentine's Day, and it is always just Valentine's Day, and she doesn't know how to break the cycle and get to live like the next day. And I was worried that I'd find that premise just annoying and repetitive and boring, but I actually didn't, because there was a point to it. Like, each time she woke up she was trying different things and like trying to break the cycle, so it wasn't actually as bad as I was expecting it to be. And again, obviously I gave it 3.5. Very similar to In the Weeds in that there was nothing wrong with it, it was just fine. I think the main thing for me that didn't wow me in this was the romance. I liked the couple together and I'm glad they end up together, but I felt like the actual moment where they got together was a bit lackluster for me after everything that happened in the book. I just felt like we could have had more of a wow moment, or just some kind of twist, or just something to make it a bit more impactful, because I did just find it a little bit boring. But yeah, it's still a good book. If you've got it, or if it's on your radar, I would still recommend it if it sounds interesting to you. It just didn't wow me. The next one, Carrie So is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've been trying to read this for months and just kept putting it off. I started it and then just didn't pick it back up, but I finally finished it this month, and yet again it was a 3.5. This one I was a little bit let down by. I went into this with high expectations because I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't think I've ever rated anything by her less than 4 stars, and that was some of her older backlist books. Malibu Rising, Daisy Jones and Evelyn Hugo, I gave all of them 5 stars. Daisy Jones and Malibu Rising are 2 of my favourite books ever. So I think going into this I was just expecting it to be a little bit more linked to that universe, because Carrie does come up, like, I don't want to say a fair amount, but like she plays a prominent enough part in Malibu Rising that I was surprised that that wasn't really addressed. And don't get me wrong, I'm glad this book wasn't about that scenario. I'm glad that the book focused on Carrie, and I actually really love her character, and I'm glad it was about her as a person. But I don't know, I just, like, it was literally just about tennis, and obviously I expected it to be a lot about tennis because it is about her and she's a tennis player, and she's making, the premise essentially is she retired and now she's coming back to try and reclaim some of her old records or beat her old records. So like, obviously it's going to be quite a lot about tennis, but I don't know, I was just expecting there to be something else going on as well in the plot, and there kind of just wasn't. So that's why I was a little bit let down by that one. Not a bad book by any means, I just didn't connect to it the way I did with other Taylor Jenkins Reid books, even though I do like Carrie as a character. The next one was The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. This is the first one in a series, and it's kind of like old dystopia vibe. The premise is literally nothing like The Maze Runner at all, but it gives me the same kind of vibe as The Maze Runner for some reason, even though the plots are completely different. But yeah, I'd say it's more along that kind of route rather than like Hunger Games Divergent route. And yet again, it was a 3.5, and the main reason was because I just don't get the point of what the characters were doing. I don't know how else to explain it, but they were just driving around in a car, and I get that, like, so everything that they were doing was for them in the here and now, which is fine, but my personal preference when I'm reading dystopia, I like it when they're trying to like save the world, even if it's unrealistic for a 16-year-old like Katniss to be the pioneer saving the world. That's what I want when I read a dystopia. I want there to be a point to what the characters are doing other than just doing what they want in the moment. Does that make sense? I just felt like I didn't understand the bigger picture, and I'm assuming that will come in the future books because it is a 4-book series, but this wasn't a short book, it's quite a chunky one, so I feel like there could have just been a bit more of a point. And it wasn't that there was no point, like, they spoke about the motivations and why they were doing things. It just, for me, wasn't enough to justify what they were doing. I don't think that'll make sense, obviously, if you've not read the book, but essentially I just wanted there to be more of a point and more of a plot other than them driving around in a car. The second to last book I read this month, I've not had a bad reading month because a lot of these books were quite big, and it's not a bad number anyway. How many is it? 3, 4, 5. I read 6 books. It's not a bad number, but I don't know, I feel like it wasn't a good month because I only read 6 and they were all, bar one of them, very average. But anyway, the next one I read was Travis by Mia Sheridan. This is the book that comes after Archer's Voice, obviously also by Mia Sheridan. And I loved Archer's Voice. I gave that like a 4.5. I was obsessed with the setting, I loved the characters, I loved the plot, I loved the romance, I loved everything about that book. The only reason that one was 4.5 and not a 5 is I felt like it was a tad too long. I felt like things got dragged out a little bit, but I still love that book. Obviously, as with almost everything else this month, I gave Travis a 3.5. I was pleasantly surprised that I didn't hate Travis. If you've read Archer's Voice, I think the thought of reading this book is very difficult. I've put it off for a long time. I read Archer's Voice a couple of years ago, and I've been putting off reading this because, God, I hated Travis in that book. And I think anyone that's read it hated Travis. And I just thought there was no way to redeem him. And don't get me wrong, he's not fully redeemed in my eyes. Like, I don't think I could ever forgive the things he did. This is literally all fictional, but you know what I mean. I could never be completely 100% attached to him because of what he did to Archer in Archer's Voice. But I was pleasantly surprised at how Mia Sheridan wrote this and how she handled it. She didn't just try and brush everything off. She didn't just ignore everything he'd done. This book very much focused on Travis's character development and on him reflecting on his past and the things that he'd done. And that was a pleasant surprise. I was very happy with that. Still love the setting. I think it's just the most gorgeous small town. The characters were great. I liked the female main character. She's not my favourite, but like, I liked her enough. I don't know, I just liked this less as it went on. And I think similar to Archer's Voice, it was just a little bit long. This one in particular, because it had less about it. Archer's Voice, I can understand the length more because there was so much to unpack. Whereas in this book, we've already unpacked a lot of it because I've read Archer's Voice. Do you know what I mean? We're kind of revisiting the same things from someone else's point of view, which is fine. But I don't think the book needed to be this long because we already know so much of the story and the setting and everything like that. I felt like we could have just cut this one down a bit. And yeah, the more it went on, the more I was just a bit like, oh, come on. Like, seriously? Some of the things that happened, I was just like rolling my eyes, oh, for God's sake. Like, I know it's like a quirky small town, but like, do these things actually happen? But it was still an enjoyable book. I still had a good time reading it. I just wished it wasn't so long and that a few things were just a bit more toned down. And then the last book I read this month, we finally broke out of the 3.5 star mould. I rated this, I can't decide between like a 4.25 and a 4.5, somewhere around that. and it's Play Along by Liz Tomford, the 4th book in the Windy City series. Obviously I've read the rest of the series. You don't necessarily have to, they are interconnected standalones, but I think it makes the most sense if you do read the others, and I liked all of the others. Controversially, I actually did like the first one. What's it called? Mile High? I think that's what it's called. I liked that one, most people don't. And then the second one, The Right Move, is the one that like everyone loves, and I did like that, but I wasn't obsessed. The third one, again, was good. Up to that point, that one was my favourite. I did like that one. It was just something a little bit different, single dad vibes. But then this one is the one that sealed the deal, and I'm now obsessed with the series. I need physical copies of them. I need to display them on the shelf. This is the book that has tied the series together for me and just made me love it. Isaiah Rhodes, what a man. Like, I actually can't. And I love Kennedy as well. I love that Kennedy is just, oh, I don't know, I just love her. I just love her. I love Isaiah, I love Kennedy, I love them together, I love the romance, I love how the romance developed. Just obsessed. One of my favourite tropes is boy obsessed, like not in a creepy way, but like in a contemporary romance, sweet kind of way. And Isaiah Rhodes is obsessed with this girl. He is obsessed with this woman. And I loved that. I loved that all the way through. He was just so sure about her. And that never wavered. And he was just, I love that. That it's the man that is so sure and just wants the relationship so badly. I feel like that can be a bit more rare. It's often the man that's like, oh, I don't know, like I'm focused on my career. Whereas in this one, it was the other way around. And Isaiah was just so set on her from the beginning. And he just never gave up on her. And he let it go at her pace and just, guys, I'm obsessed. Maybe it is a 4.5. 4.25 doesn't feel high enough because I love this book so much. It was so good, and I can't wait to get my hands on a physical copy and just put it on my shelves, because every time I think about this book it just makes me happy. And that's what I want when I read books, not to feel mid like I did about every other book this month. But yeah, that concludes this video. A very short wrap up this month. I feel like I've rattled through them because for the first 5 I just didn't have much to say because they were just all fine. But please read Play Along by Liz Tomford. Read the whole Windy City series. It's so good, even though the books are long. I think they're examples of romance books that, like, yeah, they're long, but you can understand why. Like, it's for a reason. They're not just long because the author felt like it. Like, there's an actual point. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Please give it a thumbs up down below if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!